When it comes to AP style for journalistic writing, Associated Press, I could have hours and hours of content on here. But I definitely, for the purposes of writing in a classroom, there are rules in AP style that you need to get started. And what I've tried to do here is just boil down the most common rules that you're going to need when you're putting together articles in a middle school or high school classroom. So that's what we're going to go over today with this quick guide. And I will try to give you some examples of how you would see these style rules being used in a journalism classroom. So starting out in this quick guide, we have identification of names of sources in an article. And it starts out with adult women and adult men, which oftentimes in a school setting is going to be teachers or administration, adults in the building. Our style for our high school, which commonly follows the style of the professional press, is when you first mention an adult source, you give their first and their last name and then comma, their job title, most often related to the article, all lowercase, followed by another comma, and then you lead into the quote or information. If the adult has a one word title, like principal, for example, if it's just one word, then you would put the job title in front of the name capitalized. But if the adult job title has a lot of words to it, then in other words, anything more than one, then you would put it after the name lowercase in commas. So I gave some examples here with Coach Kelly Dank. If she is a head coach or something, you can put coach before the name, and then you could call her just Coach Dank or Dank. For men, for example, we have Eric Bauer, who is a teacher, and then it would be comma English teacher after the name. We have Dr. Matt Joint, our superintendent. So in that case, we could do superintendent Dr. Matt Joint, and then we would do either Bauer or Dr. Joint or Joint after that. Same thing with Coach Sean Kreider. And then we would do Coach Kreider or just Kreider for the rest of the times in the article. These same rules apply for students. When you are using students as sources in your article, you identify them with their first and their last name, comma, their grade, or if you're writing a sports article, you could talk about their position as well on the team, or if you're talking about a club, maybe they're president of their club or something, same rules apply as the adult names. So first and last name, comma, their grade always. And then if there is a pertinent position, you can add that. Consecutive times that you're mentioning them in the article, it would just be the student's last name. Sometimes we run into the case where we have siblings in the same article. And so in that case, we typically use their first initial with their last name for all the succeeding times after we have initially introduced them. Okay. Then this talks a little bit more about job titles, which we have already gone into, as well as positions on sports teams. The other situation we might run into under letter D here would be, especially in the yearbook, when we are identifying alumni, people who have graduated, but might still be pictured in the yearbook because we have spring coverage from the year that they were seniors. But we always identify them at the time that the yearbook is going to be released, which is usually at the end of May or June after they are already gone. So examples for that, we would put their first and last name and then capitalize, comma, class of single apostrophe, and then the year they graduated. And so Molly Rebow, comma, class of apostrophe 16. And then if we are referring to a female graduate in an article, plural, I just want you to note the spellings of the plural and the singular because this comes up a lot. Plural is alumnae, and singular is alumna with an A. And for male graduates, the plural is alumni. And a lot of people misuse that. They use alumni for everything, but that's actually incorrect. And then the singular for a male graduate is alumnus. So that comes up a lot. Again, if you have a group of alumni, the entire class, then you would call them alumni. When quoting someone, you always introduce them first, full name, and then position or grade, and then you use the word said at the end of the name. And this is a big thing because some organizations that don't follow AP style put said before the name, but the appropriate format is always at the very end of the sentence. And just a brief note about the word said. Typically, the rule of thumb is when you are writing a news article, you always use said. I know it's boring and repetitive, but in a news article, it is meant to have the focus on the information in the article and not on the tags, speaker tags. In a feature article, you are allowed to stray from this a little bit. And so you can use synonyms for said, like stated or explained or added. You don't want to get too flowery. You do want to keep it quite simplistic, again, so that the focus is on the writing and the information being delivered to the reader, but that is proper AP style. Next, just getting into common capitalization rules. We do capitalize names of specific classes. So if the class has a name like core strength, we would capitalize that, but we wouldn't capitalize physical education. That's the department that it's in. Other classes that are always capitalized would be languages, like English is always capitalized, French, if multimedia one is the name of the class, places in the school building, Caroline Hall, clubs related to the school, Spanish Club, and then specific location names in the school like student office. So generally, we would capitalize more specific titles, and then generalized titles would not be capitalized. For example, things like biology, chemistry, freshmen, juniors, physical education, again, unless it is the exact name of the course. So that could vary by school. As far as referring to organizations and groups for AP style, we always want to spell it out, even if it is commonly known in our school. When we are posting things in a public forum like a website, there might be readers who are not familiar with our school. So something like National Honor Society, we want to spell that out, and then you could use the abbreviation in parentheses the first time you mention it, and then continue to use the abbreviated acronym throughout the rest of the article. Really particular AP style rule that is specific to journalism is dates. And we have what's called long months and short months in journalism. So long months are literally the months that have the longest names: January, February, August, September, October, November, December. Those are all the long months. If you are using a long month, they are listed here with a date, then you abbreviate. So you can see here in this example, January 15, because January is a long month, you would abbreviate it to Jan period 15. Same thing with December 25th, December or DEC period 25, but May, because it's not a long month, you just use May or April or June or July. Those are typical. If it is not used with a date, every month is spelled out. Okay, not sure the origin of this rule or the reason for it. I'm guessing that when we relied on newspapers mostly, they were always trying to condense and save characters. So that's where I'm guessing the rule came from. States in journalism have very odd abbreviations that seem to change every year. So this might be something that you have to get either you can purchase an AP style guide, but then you would have to purchase it every year because it changes, or you can simply just look it up online. But we do not use the postal code abbreviations, which are always two letters, like Wisconsin is W, capital I. The current abbreviation in AP style for Wisconsin is WISC period. And so if you were in an article talking about Madison, Wisconsin, it is AP style to spell out the city, but always abbreviate the state using AP style. So Madison, comma, WISC period. Doesn't come up that often, but it is worth mentioning. For numbers in AP style, we do not use like TH or RD when referring to things like fourth place. We would not use the number for TH. We would spell out fourth place. Typically, too, we spell out single digit numbers. So anything under 10 would be spelled out, and everything over 10, you can use the numeral. If you are using times in your article, like 8 p.m., you can just use the number 8, lowercase p, period, m, period. That abbreviation stands for post meridian. Same thing with AM. But if it's a specific time like 8:15 or 8:30, then you use the 8, the colon, and the 30 or the 15. Same thing with money. If it's an even amount, like $3, you can just use the dollar sign and the 3. But if it's a specific number, like a certain prom ticket amount or something, you can use the dollar sign and then let's say 3.15 for 3:15. A weird thing too with numbers and sports, which is kind of confusing, is anytime you are reporting a sports score, whether it's in the yearbook for scoreboards or if you're writing a sports article and you want to talk about the team winning or losing, you have to always report the highest score first, even if your team lost. So you would always say something like, Homestead pulled out a victory against the Nicolay, forget who they are, Knights, maybe, 25-14. But if the Highlanders lost to the Cedarburg Bulldogs, you would say the Highlanders lost 45-16, always keeping the highest score first, but specifying which team won and which team lost. Okay. And then a couple more rules with apostrophes, again, just AP style related when we are referring to sports like girls varsity soccer, boys JV lacrosse. We don't use apostrophes in AP style like we normally would in an English paper, meaning to show ownership, the team belonging to the girls. So when reporting for AP style, when you're talking about those sports teams, there's no need to use any apostrophes. And it is all lowercase unless you have the acronym as seen here, like JV. That acronym would be capitalized. We don't normally say junior varsity. And then otherwise, you would use apostrophes as normal. It's just when referring to sports teams, groups like that. And then lastly, hyphens. We see this a lot in sports reporting too. If we have what's called a compound adjective, like 200-meter breaststroke, the 400-meter relay, you use the number because it's above a single digit, and then you hyphenate 200-meter, 400-meter, if it comes before the noun, which is the event, like breaststroke or relay. Another case you might see this is like in school suspension. This is also a rule that can help you on the ACT because it is the same in English as well. You do not have to hyphenate words that come after a noun or if they are used as an adverb form, like loosely wound tie. Loosely and wound go together, but because one is an adverb, you would not hyphenate it. Brightly colored lights, same thing. Bright colored lights, we would hyphenate, but brightly colored, because brightly is an adverb, we would not. Same rule in English as well. Again, there are many, 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 many AP style rules, like when we had to report for COVID. For example, there was a very specific way to refer to COVID-19. You had to capitalize the word COVID-19. And so if there are specific instances that you're running into in your article and you don't know the AP style rule, it's always best to look it up or to invest in an AP style manual. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any additional specific questions about AP style, please be sure to drop them in the comments or reach out to Life's Next Lesson Plan at gmail.com.